4 downs. Here we go. First down. This is according to Josh Heupel. Quote, the new guys, the young guys we've added, length, athleticism, size on the offensive and defensive line, much deeper than we've been. Skill spots, same thing, which is really never an issue with what they were able to turn out of those in 21 and 22. Depth no longer an issue. Yay or nay, Caleb Calhoun? What say you?
I'm actually going to say yay. I think the bigger issue is how good the actual starters at different positions are. But in terms of being able to go deep, can you go deep with solid players? Yes. Now, who's good? That's a different story. But you can at least go deep with solid players, if that makes sense.
Okay, so you're telling me its depth is no longer an issue in year 3, headed into year 3?
I don't think it's an issue. I think the bigger issue is how good your starters are, not how much of an issue your depth is. Great example.
Oh, I see your point. So, in other words, for instance, they don't have a fantastic set of corners, but they've got 8 people who can play in the defensive backfield.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, gotcha.
Exactly. I mean, the best example was, do you remember the 2007 Tennessee team? It was 2007. Had a decent amount of depth at wide receiver after Robert Meacham left, but they didn't have anybody who could do what Robert Meacham could do. And that was a problem.
No, let me split it up a little bit. So he specifically mentioned, Josh Heupel did, the offensive and defensive line. I like their depth there and their athleticism. The secondary is really the only one I would still have a question mark about, to be honest with you. And that's the one I cited randomly. But yeah, when I broke down their offensive line and defensive line, you're not going to know all the names nowadays in this NIL world. But I think the 2 that they brought in on the offensive line are really good. I think on the defensive line, where we thought they were going to take all these transfers in because guys left with Pruitt, I think what you're seeing is they're taking guys that physically fit their style. I think you're seeing long, athletic guys that are going. If you haven't checked out the defensive line preview, please go to offthehooksports.com, because I think they've got 6 guys. Now, when you take an Omari Thomas, he is naturally a defensive tackle. And some of these guys are naturally defensive tackles or edge rushers. But there's also a lot of guys, Caleb, in this day and age that are versatile. They could probably play both. And that's where the game's going. And I think that's pretty scary for Tennessee's opposition.
Yeah, I think Josh Heupel, I've talked about this for a while. He has he's gone for this. I know it's the phrase is different type of technique, defensive linemen, but I just call them hybrid defensive ends. I feel like is the best way to say it. They look like they're defensive ends, but they can line up at defensive tackle. Dominic Bailey really fits that mold. Caleb Tremblay did 2 years ago. Jaquan Blakely. They didn't really have that last year as much. I think Latrell Bumpus did some of that, but these are guys that they stay on the line no matter what. They're not necessarily edge rushers like Byron Young or Tyler Barron who can play off the line. They stay on the line their hands always down. But they could line up in the middle or at the end when they're doing it. And I think that's I think why you saw a lot of the principles from Jeremy Pruitt's 3-4 to Tim Banks' 4-3 didn't really change that much, if that makes sense. And a lot of times the principles don't change that much anyway. It's just, is one guy having his hand up or down?
Right. And listen, everybody says something smart. I remember Jeremy Pruitt saying that and me thinking, well, that's a good point. It really doesn't matter if your hand's up or down nowadays. And you had Derek Dooley bringing up VFL, so that's stuck. That still bothers me, VFL. I hate that term. And the only reason is because Derek Dooley made it up.
I mean, I know you got some issues with Derek Dooley on certain things. I don't think Derek Dooley did everything right. I also think Derek Dooley just kind of cracked under some pressure because I think there was a lot of things going wrong with Tennessee that time that were not his fault, to be fair.
Very fair. Okay, so let's get to third down. Third down is...
Oh, wait, are we doing second down?
Oh, we forgot second down.
Yeah.
Second down, Joe Milton can play at an elite level, but competition is open. That according to Josh Heupel. And Nico is extremely coachable. So, but he started with the 4th team yesterday. Technically, he took 4th team snaps. I read 0 into that. I'm not even going to ask the question. You just go out there and you're a freshman on the first day, maybe even the first week, you take the last set of snaps. That's just how things work. But I think that I think that it's probably too early to know much about Joe Milton. I'll just tell you what I'm told by people on the inside. Nico is every bit the player to push Joe Milton to keep him from being at all lackadaisical and realize that he can be the next Anthony Richardson in this upcoming draft cycle. That's what I've been told. That Nico's every bit enough to push him, if not more, and that Joe has responded very well to that. And everybody thinks he will continue to, Caleb. But Nico is not your fourth string quarterback.
No, he's not. I mean, the only person who, and again, you're right, it's because he's a freshman. All Josh Heupel has to go on right now is what he did playing high school ball and maybe practicing with the team in the winter, but he was still preparing for that Polynesian Bowl at the time. So almost nothing to go on. Only Dennis Dodd has information about Nico as a quarterback at the college level, and because he's seen something that nobody else has.
I feel pretty confident on my information about Nico. So I don't want to be confused with knowing more about Nico than anybody, but I will tell you that I feel like I'm in pretty good shape. So
I'm waiting for Dennis Dodd to write that him being fourth string is evident that he's not ready to play.
Yes, that he's fourth string, not ready to play. Some redheaded hooker is propping him up, and he doesn't know what he's talking about. I like Dennis Dodd. I can handle him. All right. In this third down, all offensive linemen have position flexibility, alluding that they can play either left or right side. All right. If I start to twitch at any point, Caleb, just go ahead and call me out and say, Dave, are you okay? Because this to me is just weird. It's kind of Clausen-like, Dave Clausen-like, that you would play people on the left and right. But goodness gracious, they did it with Darnell Wright. He played a whole season left, and they moved him to right. They're going to do the same thing with Crawford and Mincy. And that's the way things are going to go. And that's the way they run their program. And based off success, I can say nothing. But it is weird to me that an offensive lineman who relies so much on footwork plays both sides of the offensive line. It's just weird to old-fashioned old Dave. But I got to remember that everybody on Tennessee's coaching staff, offensive coaching staff, is younger than me. So I'm the old guy in the room.
I think one of the differences is, and you're actually seeing this with NFL. I don't know if you've noticed in the past 10 years, once the advent of the spread came, a lot of NFL GMs were taking defensive linemen and converting them to offensive linemen because, and Heupel doesn't run a spread. I'm not saying that, but offensive linemen and spread formations are not taught to maintain blocks. All they're taught to do is just direct players a certain way, if that makes sense. And look, during the Fulmer years, it was old-fashioned in this way. And I mean, look, whatever we can say about Fulmer, he was a superb line coach. And he always had good line coaches. I mean, he had Mike Berry for a few years. I mean, he just had some really good offensive line coaches. And they were taught to maintain blocks. And I think that is where you get into a habit playing one side. Heupel's offense, you've talked about this. One, you can block downfield now, which was not a thing back in the day. You're taught more to, it's kind of a quick hit, force him a certain way, and then pick up another guy. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense. And I don't think footwork, when you're not running the ball as often, when you're zone blocking and you're not man on man, which is basically what everybody does now, is a zone block thing, which people used to hate so much 10 years ago. But anyway, when you're zone blocking, I don't think footwork is nearly as important, but it just is weird to me. And I'll just leave it at that. It's working. That's fine. I don't know how my wife makes much better coffee than me in the morning, but she does. So I just live with it. Cameron Seldon starting out in the backfield. This is a little bit of a surprise. If you would have told me that Seldon, a wide receiver with speed and ability, would have been the guy that flipped, I didn't necessarily think he would be that guy. However, I do like the fact that Josh Heupel is throwing his weight around a little bit and saying, hey, listen, bud, because remember, coaches used to hate doing this back in the day. They used to hate going to Dominique Stevenson and saying, hey, you're not going to play running back like you did in high school. We're going to move you to linebacker. Fred White, you're not going to play cornerback where you ran a 10-200 meters. You're going to play safety, and we need you to add on about 15 to 20 pounds by next year, okay? I mean, they didn't like doing it back then, but they especially, Caleb, don't like doing it now with the transfer portal. So I don't know how that conversation went, but kudos to Josh Heupel for saying, if you want to be a part of this program and you want to be an impact player, then you're going to have to switch positions.
Yeah, it threw me off because I thought –
Me too.
I thought they definitely could have used him more at linebacker or cornerback. Maybe Josh Heupel felt, Cameron Seldon has the Jabari Small build. I think he's more of a total package back, if that makes sense, as opposed to an all-purpose back like Wright or Sampson or a power back like Khalifa Keith, who's not coming till the summer. I think he wants to push Jabari Small. I got no knock on Jabari Small. I thought he was solid last year, but quite honestly, I thought things were laid out for Jabari Small to have a record-setting year last year. Jalen Wright was hurt at the beginning of the year. Dylan Sampson hadn't come on yet, and Small was solid, but you didn't really see him like take a 5-yard gain and turn it into a 65-yard gain, if that makes sense.
I don't think they have a special tailback right now.
Right.
Which is, I think that one of the reasons, and if you haven't checked out the video, boy, it was great getting a video at a camp. I thought that was pretty cool. But if you haven't had a chance to check it out, we have a video of one of the top 2 running backs in the nation, depending on who you listen to. But you can certainly check that out. Jarrett Gibson, 5-star running back. That is thanks to our good friend Luke Winstall. He'll be working with us from time to time. But that's a special tailback. That's a guy who takes the 6-yard gain and makes it a 25. That's a guy who takes the 20-yard gain and makes it an 80. Again, like you, no offense to Jabari Small or any other cats on board, but I just don't see that they have that. Maybe with Dylan Sampson, but Dylan Sampson's not going to be in a 25 carry a game type of tailback either.
No, he can't be. He's going to be more like Jalen Wright. And that's why I think they're giving Cameron Seldon some reps at this position. I think, look, we forgot about this because Joe Milton did a lot of things that a lot of us were surprised by in the Orange Bowl. There were a lot of possessions during that game where Tennessee didn't score. And I think Heupel has some concerns there, and that's where you're going to need, I think, more this year more than last year, he wants a running back who can take that 5-yard gain and turn it into a 25-yard gain. I think it's more important this year to have that than it was last year, particularly when there's a question if there's a tight end on board yet that can do what Princeton Fant did between the 20s.
And I'll specifically ask Jacob Ward about some of that. We've joked around about him playing fullback or doing some of those things, but could he? Yeah, I mean, I think he's a great athlete. I think Princeton Fant, considering lateral and everything, was an incredible athlete.